Alright guys, so you know how I said we are in for a more calm, sort of like pleasant season till the end of the season? Yeah, after this episode, there is absolutely no way that is going to happen. Hey guys, Caitriona for Outlander, Season 2, Episode 2, not in Scotland anymore, and holy shit, I mean, here's the thing about this episode. From the looks of where this episode was going, this just felt like a place-setting episode. That's the kind of episode I thought we were going to get. That's what I thought we were headed for. And that is not at all what this episode was. I mean, after that big reveal, I have no idea where we're headed for the rest of the season. I absolutely love that. I love that this season, this episode, like I said, it felt just like a place-setting episode, but it's so much more than that. Let's just get into this episode because it was amazing, and I am already, you guys know, I was loving this season. I love this episode, I think, even more than the first. I don't know if I loved it as much as the first episode, because the first episode just had that great contrast between the present and then what was going on now, which I guess now is the present and that's the future, whatever you want to say, but let's just get into this episode. There's a lot to get into, and of course, I definitely want to talk about it. So, right away, we see Claire and Jamie. They are having sex, and right away, you can see that Jamie and Claire can't really have sex anymore, because we see right away that Jamie is picturing Jack. He's picturing him having sex with Jack, because everything that's going on, he's haunting Jamie's dreams, and as the nightmare continues, Jamie draws a dagger, stabs Jack repeatedly until they are both drenched in blood, and Jamie then jolts awake. Luckily, that was just a nightmare, but it's also really showing that Claire and Jamie can't really have sex right now, just because the fact that every move that Claire makes, even though Jamie is sort of over what Jack did, he's never going to be all the way over. I mean, just what Jack did is so crazy and just so monumental, just so effective to Jamie. It's affecting him so much just because of how much it affected him. And it's so much drastically affected him, you can tell, and it's crazy to see, and you really don't know if he's going to be able to get over what happened, and Claire reaches over to calm him down, trying to reassure him that Jack is dead, and Jamie replies that he still lives in his head and leaves their bed to go over the day's receipts since he can no longer have a peaceful night's sleep, and it's a really sad scene, definitely the way they did that. What I love is that, yes, the show is about Claire, but it's about Jamie just as much. You can tell this season, even though we are focused on Claire, they really are focusing a lot on Jamie as well, because Jamie suffered a lot last season, obviously, and we really need to see how he's recovering from that. And I don't really know if he's going to be able to, especially after what we find out in this episode, which I know you guys want me to get to. So, Claire, dressed in fine clothes, rushed around the house with a servant on her heels, wondering why Claire continually folds her clothes. By the way, I gotta say, this episode is actually really funny. There were actually some really funny scenes and lines this episode, and I definitely really love that. I also really love how they basically introduced like 20 new characters in this episode, and each one of them is so interesting. We'll get into that, though. But she wonders why Claire continually folds her clothes and makes her bed. Among other household chores, the maid sees as her duties, because that's what Claire's used to. She's used to doing these things on her own, but back then, now in France, she is a woman that does that for her, and she tries to instill in Claire there's a woman of her standing, especially one that is with child, simply does not carry out these kind of duties, and Claire pleases her when she tells the woman she will endeavor to be sloppier in her personal habits. Claire is then found running a home in Paris to be a greater, you can tell that just, she's not used to this. She's used to doing these things on her own. She's not used to having sort of like a maid, but this isn't even a maid. This is basically a woman doing things for her. A maid sort of just does things when you're not there, but this is more of just a woman basically doing anything that Claire could do for her, and we know how independent Claire is, and you can see that it's kind of maddening. Like, Claire doesn't really love this necessarily. Like, she enjoys, she kind of enjoys she should have to do this stuff, but it's quite a change for her. I mean, especially from the Scotland landscape, and not in Scotland anymore is perfect time for this episode, because you can definitely tell that Claire and Jamie, they feel that void. They feel that void that they're no longer in Scotland. They miss certain things about Scotland, and, they're kind of not really knowing how to deal with this, because they kind of feel out of place here. So, basically, she enters her carriage, sets off to attend to the day's agenda. The pair has been in Paris for several weeks, we find out, but the city still fascinates Claire, who had later been in the city at the end of the Second World War, as we know. So, exiting the carriage, Claire then takes to the streets to find an apothecary shop, as she enters, taking the sights before asking after a Master Raymond, who appears at the sound of his name. The pair then exchange pleasantries before Claire asks for a sleep aid for Jamie's nightmares, because obviously, because of him having these nightmares, he's not sleeping right, and she wants to find a way to fix this, and Raymond moves about the shop collecting ingredients for something he believes will be more suitable for Jamie's needs. He recognizes Claire as someone with a connection to the profession, and she admits to being a healer, as we know, and this bit of information sparks something in Raymond, who immediately knows her name from the Comte's tales of her arrival to the city and her part in the burning of his ship and cargo. Now, this I was really worried about, because I'm like, oh shit, is Raymond, associated with the Comte? Does he know what the Comte has planned? Which we don't hear anything about what the Comte has planned for, for Jamie and Claire, but you know that that's still there. You know that he obviously is planning what's going to happen, and that definitely is going to happen in the season at some point. I don't know when, but definitely he's going to get his revenge. So Raymond says the man's his rival, and I like that we found out that he's not associated with the Comte, rather the Comte is his rival, a kinder way to say enemy, and since he's also Claire's, that makes them friends. So basically, they kind of are bonding over this, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of Raymond and Claire. I kind of like their bonding here. You know, they're bonding over the fact that he is, you know, kind of jealous of the Comte, and she, you know, is bonding with him over the fact that the Comte, she's already made an enemy, because once again, the Comte does that stuff and she doesn't, and I love how out of place Claire is feeling, and this is kind of the first person that doesn't make her feel completely out of place. You know, she actually feels like she is here, she feels like she understands the world, and I like seeing that, and she's used to this guy. You know, he's not treating her like she's, you know, like she's not used to what's going on. So Claire's grateful for his kindness and his gift to her. A crowd then gathers and looks on as Jamie and Murtaugh practice their swordsmanship, and I love Murtaugh, honestly. I've said before, I love Murtaugh, but I really feel like this season they're showcasing Murtaugh more, because I will say last season, characters like Murtaugh, Ned, Angus, I never really could tell who was who, just because of the fact that we focused so much on Claire and Jamie. Not that I didn't love characters like Dougal and Colum and characters like that, there were just so many of them that a lot of times I couldn't really tell what was going on in their storylines until I actually read the recap I read for you guys, just because of the fact that there are just so many of them. So I like that now we just have Murtaugh. It just creates more, you know, interesting of a dynamic. I like seeing that, and it creates less, convoluted story. And it wasn't convoluted last year, but it just gives Murtaugh more to do, and it gives him more of a character, and it makes him more of a standout than some of the other ones. Because with all those characters, there wasn't really a standout. You know, some of them were really good characters, but it was just Claire and Jamie were the focus. And this season, it feels like Murtaugh is just as much of a focus, and I really like that. So Murtaugh encourages Jamie to fight through the pain in his hand, and Jamie succeeds. And when Jamie calls for an end of their practice, Murtaugh turns to the spectators and yells for them to disperse, because obviously Jamie wants to have a private conversation. Jamie is not surprised by their presence, since dueling is outlawed in France. That's not something they do, surprisingly, which I find very interesting that that's actually outlawed. And the pair settle for a moment, and Murtaugh takes this moment to show his disdain for their current location, a place full of asses and armpits and too many people. And Murtaugh wonders if Jamie misses Scotland as much as he does, because he really misses, and he even admits to missing Rupert and Angus, which, if you guys remember, Murtaugh absolutely despised Rupert and Angus, so I was very surprised as well to find out that he actually misses them. But at the same time, you know, that was part of his life, you know, dealing with them. It's just, you know, that was part of what his life was, and he misses that. He was so used to it and felt comfortable, and now he isn't feeling as comfortable, you can tell. And basically, Jamie assures him that they will not be in France forever, but that is of little comfort to his companion. He doesn't care, you know, he knows that it's only, and that line where he says, we're not going to be here forever, it's also very sad, because as we know, Jamie is going to end up dying on that battlefield, so that's also why that line is very sad, and that's why I think this conversation was one of the saddest scenes this episode. I mean, even some of the scenes that were hopeful, we know there really is no hope this season, not just because of what we knew last week, but also what we find out at the end of this episode, which I'll get into. So Murtaugh also questions their plans, since they came to the country to stop a rebellion, and all they have accomplished is selling wine, which according to Murtaugh is just for drinking. So they haven't really done much of anything in terms of, you know, trying to stop the Jacobite and everything. And he also suggests that the best way to stop the rebellion is to simply just kill Charles Stuart. That's the best thing to do, but as Jamie says, he is no assassin, and they are not even sure he is in Paris, and they don't just kill. That's not what they do. They're not there to kill. They're not even sure really what's going to happen, and Murtaugh's determined to find him, but that he still leaves his father to deal with, and you have to wonder, you know, is Murtaugh's desire to be home in Scotland worth killing a prince and a king? You know, that's kind of what he's thinking, and in that moment, Jamie's logic kind of prevails. He knows what he wants to do here. He's not going to, you know, he doesn't just want to kill, that's the thing. But you don't really know, you know, is Jamie possibly going to think about killing? Is Murtaugh going to encourage him to? And of course, Murtaugh doesn't really know all about Claire and Jamie, how they know this stuff, which I think is definitely very interesting. You can definitely see that that moment is definitely going to happen, where Jamie does tell Murtaugh. Although I am kind of wondering, is this going to be an off-screen thing, where we don't actually see him tell him? Because I kind of feel like this is where we're headed, where Jamie Murtaugh, he actually tells him, but he's going to tell him off screen. I'm not really sure. So back at home, because we know that Jamie said, I'll tell you later, and I kind of feel like in this scene he already has, but I don't really know. Maybe I just read that wrong, but to me, it kind of feels like Murtaugh already knows what's going on with Claire and everything. Because we had the 2 week later time jump, obviously. So back at home, Claire greets Jamie with a letter from Jared inviting Jamie to meet with Prince Charles at a brothel. Jamie and Murtaugh then walk the streets at night until they arrive to their desired location, and inside they're seated with Prince Charles, and Jamie hopes to discuss the matters at hand, but is interrupted briefly by ladies of the establishment. And when their conversation resumes, Charles is put off by Murtaugh's presence because we know that Murtaugh is not a polite guy. He's not polite, he's very abrupt, he's very outspoken, and he basically just says what he feels, and that's something that Charles does not love. I mean, the poster of this season says the etiquettes of war, which is very interesting because a big part of being in France is your etiquette. Everything in France is classy. You know, everyone talks like this. Everyone's classy like this. That's how everyone talks. That's just sort of the thing. And the characters we saw in this episode, you definitely could tell that they have a certain standard to live by. And it's not that Jamie and Claire are really clashing with it. It's just Jamie, Claire, and Murtaugh are clearly not used to that etiquette that is in this episode, which I really did enjoy. So basically, I think it's very interesting as well, because we really never seen them in a situation like this. We've seen Claire kind of vulnerable, but now not only Claire is vulnerable in this world, Jamie and Murtaugh are just as vulnerable, and I really love that. So the prince inquires about the state of the clans in Scotland and wonders if they are prepared for his call to arms. Jamie is honest, saying the clans cannot agree on the color of the sky, let alone put their differences aside to fight. You know, they can't even fight, they can't even decide on the color of the sky. How the hell are they going to put their differences aside to fight? It's just not going to happen alongside each other against the British, and Charles is distressed by the news since it isn't contrary to what else he has heard. This is not what he heard at all, and difficult to hear from someone who claims to be a Jacobite, because he doesn't think that Jamie really is a Jacobite. I mean, if Jamie would say this, there's no way he's a Jacobite. So Jamie assures him that he harbors no warm feelings for the British, but he refuses to lie to the price and lead all of Scotland to disaster. Now, I thought that Jamie was going to have convinced him that he was a Jacobite by, showing him the burns. I thought he was going to do that, but he doesn't actually do that. I thought it was interesting they didn't do that here, which I heard that's going to happen a lot. I heard that those burns on the scars on Jamie's back, he's going to do that a lot, basically, to get people on his side, which would make sense because it just creates not only a vulnerability and empathy for Jamie, but it also shows loyalty and everything that Jamie's endured and that he'll do anything to protect these people. I mean, we know that he did that to protect his sister, so you can totally understand why Jamie, why that's a way for Jamie to show his loyalty. So Murtaugh interjects, asking if the prince has ever been to Scotland, which of course he has not, and Murtaugh goes on to describe it as a beautiful country with people of the land who will fight, but for what? And the prince has now heard the truth from two of them, but to Charles, God's truth is the only one that matters. And I think it's very interesting, the way that Charles has just one belief and God is the only opinion that matters. I like that Charles isn't just a dick. I was thinking that Prince Charles is just going to be this dickish kind of guy, but he's not at all. He actually does have beliefs. He believes in God, and he has a strong belief that God will basically lead them, and God will make decisions for him, and basically God's the only opinion that matters, which I think is very interesting. I didn't know how, religious of a man Prince Charles really was. I kind of want to look this up and see if that's actually true, because I find that very interesting. And basically, he feels that he is the one to unite the clans, and the cause shall succeed, that God will lead the way. However, they need money, and this may come to be if they can sway the French Minister of Finance, Francis Duvernay, because Charles is in the country unofficially. He cannot be received at court, but Jamie can't go in his place since he now has the heart of a true patriot. So he encourages him to go into King Louis's court and be his advocate for rebellion. Now, Charles, of course, isn't prince yet. He's only just there. He's not prince. King Louis, of course, actually, Prince Charles is the prince, but King Louis is the king, and be his advocate for rebellion. He leaves the pair to seek the comfort of a woman, and as he leaves, Murtaugh reminds Jamie that it is not too late to just slit his throat. Again, Murtaugh's just telling Jamie, we just gotta kill this guy, which is obviously not what they want to do. They can tell that, Charles, they are kind of getting through to him. It's just Charles has this very deep belief, and he's not really sure if Jamie is going to be able to lead the way, and, Jamie's obviously not God, but he knows what he's doing, and I think they're starting to get through to him, but you don't really know. So Claire's proud of what Jamie has accomplished tonight, but Murtaugh, angered by the prince, who he believes determined to get everyone killed if he is not stopped. Claire thinks that there is a time to sway Charles, but Jamie is less sure of being able to change his convictions, and Claire points out that the prince is right about needing to raise money for the war, and they can work to make sure he does not receive the funds he needs, as well as secure an invitation to Versailles. And I love how Claire's basically saying, look, everything that, Charles wants, we can eventually use against him, because of course their main goal is to stop the Jacobite rebellion and stop everyone from being killed. So I definitely thought this was very interesting. I definitely like seeing that, and Basically, during their 3 months in Paris, Claire's also become very close friends with Louise de Rohan, and this is a very interesting character, this character we have, because it's very different than Claire and Galis, and that's something I really love, because you can tell Louise is there to kind of be the Galis of France for Claire, but she's not at all like Galis. First of all, she's not as shady as Galis, and she's also not as nice as Galis. This is a very selfish, very just hoity-toity kind of woman. That's exactly who she is. She's the kind of woman that she walks by, she's very rich, she thinks she's better than everyone else. That's exactly who she is. And you can tell these two have become very close friends, though. She hoped her efforts there would prove fruitful to her cause, because basically she's there because Louise is a good ally. That's the only reason Claire's friends with her. And Claire stands by as Louise has her legs waxed and calls out for Mary. Very funny scene, by the way, with Louise having her legs waxed. I love that every time her legs were just waxed, she screamed. I thought that was pretty funny. So she calls out for Mary, who is a girl she's chaperoning in Paris to join her and Claire, and Mary Hawkins I found to be one of the most interesting characters we get introduced to in this episode. Something else I love, by the way, is, of course, the poster of the season. There's so many characters I didn't recognize. In this episode, we pretty much found out who they all are. Mary Hawkins, right away you can tell, is very shy. Just by her line, I'm as good as, I'm practically naked, that line, because she basically is just so shy she can't even have a conversation with strangers. And she's introduced to Claire, fellow Englishman woman, basically, and Claire seems familiar with the girl's name, but she cannot place where she heard it at the moment, which that is very interesting. How does she know Mary? What connection does she have to her? That's something we don't find out in this episode. I think we are going to find out as the season goes on, obviously. So Mary's engaged to the Victime Marigny, an older widower of means, is put off by Louise's vulgarity. He just doesn't like how vulgar and kind of just outspoken Louise really is. She tries to leave, but it's stopped as Louise exclaims Claire will join her and this isn't vinyl, and Mary at Versailles. Claire is pleased by the news and also secures an invitation for Jamie. Louise resumes her position on her chase, this time exposing herself for more intimate waxing. And again, kind of a funny scene there. Claire then climbs into bed with Jamie, and we get this kind of cute scene here. I like the way this was done. It's already showing that Claire is kind of acclimating to France just in the way that things are, because right away, Jamie sees that Claire has shaved her honey pot, as in her vagina, which I love that he calls it her honey pot. I think that's just really cool. I just think it's really funny the way that's done. And it also shows it's sort of like the innocence in Jamie. Even though he is very sexual with Claire, he'll always have that sort of childlike innocence to him, which you definitely saw here. And Jamie's intrigued, and the pair attempt intimacy, but again, they just can't do it because of Jack. Jack's ghost just haunts them, and it's something that they just can't get past, and unfortunately, they just can't have sex because of it. But Claire does reassure Jamie that everything's alright, and the pair simply goes to sleep, and I don't see this as repetitive. I mean, think about what Jamie's going through. He really just can't be with Claire intimately. Everything else he seems to be fine. When it comes to intimacy, they just can't do it right now. It's too crazy right now. You know, Jack really affected Jamie in this way that he's never felt before, and it's something that, obviously, is going to be very hard to come back from, you can tell. So 2 weeks later, Jamie and Murch are preparing to leave for court as Claire descends the stairs as a vision in red, and both men are just speechless. I love the way this was done, and of course, you guys are probably wondering, why was that dress so revealing? You know, we've seen it so many times. From what Caitriona Bell said, Balfe said it was supposed to be revealing. That's basically what it is. It was supposed to be revealing, but Jamie's shocked by how exposed Claire is in the dress. I love the line where he's like, first her honey pot, now this. I thought that was very funny, and suggests she cover it up a bit, but Claire's ahead of producing a matching red fan to cover her chest, and of course that's something that you have in France. You know, you can't be that out, but basically she's there to cover herself with a fan. So Jamie, Claire, and Murtaugh arrive on the heels of Louise and Mary. Louise is happy to introduce Claire to whoever she wishes to meet, and when she expresses an interest in Monsieur Derveny, Louise promises to help her make his acquaintance, which I love that Louise just like, I'll introduce you to everyone, I know everyone, and a young one rushes up to Jamie as the group moves about the room. Jamie embraces Annalise as Claire looks on, and right now this isn't a problem, but I do feel this is going to be a problem as it goes on. Not necessarily a love triangle, but I do feel that Annalise is kind of going to be like Leary a little bit. Hopefully not as annoying, let's hope not, because you guys know I actually like Leary, and then she got very annoying, and then luckily she's gone now, but I am worried that Annalise, I don't think it's going to be as annoying, but I do think she's going to be a problem, just from the way Claire's look especially, you can tell that her face is full of courtesy, but she's just trying to be courteous. Like, in her mind, she's kind of like, oh, great, another Leary. I feel like in her mind, she's thinking this is going to be another Leary, but I don't really know. That's just how I saw it. So Jamie introduced the pair. Annalise congratulates her on having such a strong, passionate man for her husband, but clearly bothers Claire with the familiar way she touches Jamie, which, again, like I said, she feels very uncomfortable, the way that they're looking at each other. I mean, you can tell these two have a past. We don't know what's going on there, but they definitely have a past. And Annalise offers to take Jamie to meet with the king, and with Claire's permission, and Murtaugh's supervision, the pair head off to see the king, and basically Jamie and Murtaugh join the group of men who are gathered around the King Louis as he sits on another kind of throne, and King Louis is way different than Prince Charles. I love that we get introduced to him just taking a shit. I think that's pretty funny the way that was done, and I love Jamie's line of only in France a king needs an audience to shite. I thought that was a hilarious line. Jamie insists that he should be introduced to the king in order to aid him in his suffering, and after his introduction, he suggests the king eat patronage or porridge every morning to make some movements, and basically, he feels like he could help him. So Louise and Claire gossip among a group of women as Mary stands off to the side, engaged in conversation with a young man, and Claire excuses herself from the group, as does Louise when she spots Monsieur Duvernay, who she does, of course, express an interest in across the room. And this is when things get really crazier, because Monsieur Duvernay, it gives her some news that she definitely didn't expect to have, which we'll get into, but across the room informs him that Claire wishes to meet him. He's anxious to meet her, having noticed her in her dress earlier in the evening. Louise moves to escort him to Claire, but he stops her, insisting he goes on his own. Claire strolls outside, taking refuge on a bridge. Duvernay catches up to her, mistakes Claire's interest in meeting him for something more. He attempts to seduce her, not realizing that she's married, but is interrupted by the appearance of Jamie, who tosses the other man in the water, which I love how protected Jamie is of Claire, and it doesn't come across as possessive. Like, it comes across as Jamie won't let anyone touch her because, you know, that's his woman, and he's not going to let anyone do that to her. That's just who he is. You know, he's not going to let anyone, especially after what happened to Jack, you can tell he's grown kind of overprotective of Claire. And I don't think it's a problem right now, but I do think it could be a bit of a problem as the show goes on, just because of how protective he is. And I think it's mainly because of Jack, because he knows the kind of abuse that Jack did, and he doesn't want the same thing to happen to Claire because he would never want her to go through something like that. So before Claire can inform that it was the Minister of Finance, obviously, you know, Jamie didn't know that. So back inside, Claire, Jamie, Murtaugh surround Duvernay as he attempts to dry himself by the fire and extends an apology to the couple for his behavior, which Claire accepts. He extends an offer to assist them, but Jamie assures the man that his friendship is service enough, and after a brief appearance by the king, Murtaugh is disturbed by someone he sees across the room, taking off with Jamie on his heels. Murtaugh comes face to face with the Duke of Sandagram and threatens him, and Jamie is quick to stop his companion, reminding him to never to draw a weapon in the presence of a king. That's just not something you do. I mean, the king is so high royalty, you would never want to just draw the weapon. But again, Murtaugh is not someone that is classy. Murtaugh's not at all classy, and that's something I really like about Murtaugh as a character. It kind of adds this fun dynamic between Jamie and Murtaugh. Obviously, you know, the show's not necessarily fun, but I do like that we do have this kind of fun dynamic there, where Murtaugh just wants to kill every man he sees while Jamie tries to stop him. It's kind of fun, and I like that. So the Duke turns his attention to Claire, who has caught up with the others, but she refuses his niceties. He tries to assuage his guilt by placing the blame on Jack for not succeeding with the petition, and although Jamie dismisses it with a simple "what's done is done," Claire and Murtaugh are clearly disgusted by his presence. They can tell right away that this guy, you know, is... You know, he obviously has a very strong belief in what he's doing, and he's very much against them. And when the Duke inquires about their residence in France, Claire simply mentions assisting Jared with his business. She also dismisses the men so she can stay to talk to the Duke alone, because she knows that the Duke definitely cannot be trusted, just from the way he's talking. So the pair exchange pleasant jabs at one another until a young man, the one previously engaging in conversation with Mary, interrupts to inform the Duke of the impending fireworks. And this is just crazy. The way this was done, I mean, I've been shocked by this show. Probably the most shocking twist we ever had in Outlander happens in this episode. I mean, this was just crazy. The Duke introduced himself to Claire as Alexander Randall. Basically, no, that is not a coincidence. He is, in fact, Jack's brother, and he is new secretary and brother to Jack Randall. She's shocked to hear Alexander mention his brother in the present tense, news that clearly distresses her, and their conversations are interrupted by the start of fireworks as the Duke leaves, and basically... we see that he's talking about Jack and everything and what's going on there, and we find out in the scene that not only is Jack not dead and does have a few, basically not only has Jack wrote some letters and he's wounded, he's not dead. Jack is in fact alive, he's still out there, and Claire looks about the room for Jamie, resolved not to tell him about the news, because that's the worst thing that could happen. For her to tell him that Jack's alive, I mean, I have no idea what Jamie's going to do, but frightened about what will happen when the inevitability finds out, because eventually Jamie's got to find out, and that is how the episode ends, and holy shit, guys, what an episode this was. I mean, like I said, it started off as a place-setting episode, getting to learn the environment, getting to see characters, but now that we have this problem, I have no idea what is going to happen here. I don't know what we're going to do, what's going to happen with this. This is obviously a huge problem, and especially with the way Jamie's acting around Claire. Not that their relationships necessarily change, but there are, like I said, two major things I'm noticing. First of all, we have that idea, of Jamie not being able to have sex with Claire. Two, he's much more protective of her. Like, any man that comes near her, he'll just, attack immediately, because obviously what happened with Jack, he doesn't want the same thing to happen with Claire. I mean, he's been like that since, Jack attacked Claire in episode 8 of last season, if you guys remember, the mid-season finale. He rescued Claire and was kind of like her royal steed. But you kind of see that she doesn't, royal prince or whatever, but you really see that Claire doesn't really feel like she needs that. And anything when Jamie does that, she kind of feels it's unnecessary, especially because he's just doing it to any guy he sees, and that obviously is a problem. So what's going to happen with that? Jamie's got to find out at some point, but I don't know what's going to happen, because this the worst thing that could have happened to Jamie and Claire is for there to be someone that is directly related, not only directly related, but is the brother of Jack and knows everything about Jack, knows everything that's going on, and especially since I'm not sure if he knows that Jamie is, Claire's husband, there is no telling what's going to happen here. But I gotta say, I do like the actor that plays Alexander Brown, because it looks exactly like Tobias Menzies. I think they did a very good job with casting that role. Like, he looks very similar, and they did a very good job with that. I also like the dynamic between Murtaugh and Jamie, like I said, but this is, I think, going to eventually be a problem. Just the fact that Murtaugh is right now just wanting to kill, we don't really know what's going to happen, but I do think he's going to be able to convince Jamie to do something in terms of killing. I don't think Jamie necessarily is going to kill, but I do think he's going to eventually get through to Jamie, where they need to kill someone. The Duke, they definitely need to kill. You can definitely tell they're going to kill the Duke, and we'll have to see what happens there. Now, the other part of Jack being alive, as we know, Jamie does die on the battlefield. So, does Jack get involved with Jamie, and does he eventually kill Jamie? We know that Jack is going to come back at some point, knowing that he's there. It's scary. It really is scary, because it means we're going to have another Wentworth prison. That's happening this season. I don't want that to happen. You guys know I couldn't watch the episode. It was an incredible episode. Don't get me wrong. I just couldn't watch it. There are certain things that I don't think anyone should have to watch, and that's one of those things. It was an incredible episode. It's nothing I could ever watch again, just because it was just so hard to watch. But I do like that Jack is still alive. It's just that void in the show, there's no way they'd be able to fill it. You got, like I've said, Jack, I think, is one of the best villains on TV. His motivation, he is about as sinister as villains get. He is a sadist, and that's something that Alexander doesn't seem to be as much of a sadist, but he does, in fact, seem to be, not necessarily against his brother. So I don't think Alexander's as bad, but of course, he does know what Jack is up to, and eventually it is going to become a problem, especially if Alexander's going to become a regular, figure that Claire and Jamie interact with. This is definitely going to be a problem. But how is Jamie going to find out? That's something I'm very interested in. Also, Claire acclimating to France. She's already kind of acclimating, but in many ways she's not. What's going to happen with that? I think that eventually is going to become a problem. It's not right now, but we'll have to see what happens with that. Does Murtaugh know that what's going on with Claire? I kind of feel like Jamie already told him. I mean, we didn't really get that scene, but since, Murtaugh knows what Jamie and Claire are up to, I don't understand, does he know that Claire's from 1940s? I just feel like he kind of knows that. I'm not really sure, though. I feel like it would only make sense for Jamie to tell him. But again, we've had 2 weeks, and we didn't really see, when Jamie says, when that time comes, I'll tell you. Clearly, Murtaugh knows why they're doing this. So I'm interested in seeing really what's going to happen there, if Murtaugh's going to find out what's happening, because I think that's very interesting. Let's talk about Charles as well, because it seems like Charles, they are getting on a good page. They are on kind of the same page as him. He, like I said, he just has this very deep belief in God, and it's something that obviously, when someone questions your religion, that's one of the most things that you never want them to do. When you have a religion, that's your religion, and you most times stick by it, and that very much seems like what's going on with Charles. He sticks by his religion, he's loyal in that way, and he'll never go against his religion. That's something that I think is going to be very interesting with Jamie. Jamie, I don't really know what religion he has. I feel like he has a religion, but definitely not as much as Charles. He structures everything around this religion. It's kind of like The Path, the show I just reviewed before this, The Path, where, everyone's so addicted to, where you're so addicted to your religion and you do everything around it. That's kind of how Charles is. He believes that God will fix every problem, whether that's right or not. I'm not saying if that's whether right or not, that's just how Charles is, and I think that's very interesting. Kind of something, like I said, I do want to look up is more about the history of Charles Stewart, if he actually did believe in that stuff, because obviously they had to have, that has to be true. That can't be something that's not true. I think that's already very interesting, what's going to happen there. Claire and Isabel, I like the bonding between Claire and Louise. I think it's very interesting. Louise, like I said, is very spoiled and very just, you know, selfish and things like that, but also very used to the time, and I think she's a good ally for Claire. But we'll have to see where this goes. I like the dynamic between them overall. And then Mary as well. I do like how shy Mary is right now, but you can tell eventually that Claire's, I think, going to abandon Louise at some point, because right now I think she's only with Louise because she's an ally, and when Louise finds out what Claire plans on doing, which I think she inevitably will, she just has to at some point, I'm interested in seeing what's going to happen there. I already like these characters a lot more in the Season 1 characters. Like I said, we were defined by all these men, and I just didn't find them as interesting. A lot of them were fine, but there were no standouts. Murtaugh is definitely, I like that they're giving him more to do. Like I said, I think he's becoming more of a standout. And overall, guys, I'm already liking this season more than Season 1. I mean, there's a lot more going on this season. Last season was Claire acclimating to Scotland, acclimating to the time period. Now she's acclimated to, you know, the 1700s or wherever we are. I think we're in the 1700s, but, you know, she's acclimated to the 1700s and what's going on with that, but she doesn't fully, you know, now she's in France, and already she's acclimating to it, but now they have this whole thing going on with Jack, and there's so much more at stake with both Jamie, Claire, and Murtaugh. We'll have to see what happens with that, but overall, guys, absolutely love this episode. Let me know what you guys saw this episode, loving this season overall, and we'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for either a classic movie review or for the originals, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.